Imagine you are sitting at 16,000 feet. The seatbelt sign is off. You're drinking a coffee, reading a book, trusting the massive machine around you. And then, in a fraction of a second, the wall of the airplane explodes outward. Freezing wind violently rips through the cabin. You are staring out into the black abyss of the sky, gripping your armrest, realizing that the very machine meant to protect you was built on a deadly lie. On January 5th, 2024, Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 suffered a catastrophic structural failure mid-flight. A door plug simply blew off. It was a terrifying wake-up call to the world, but to the insiders in the aerospace industry, it was something much worse. It was the inevitable result of a decades-long corporate disease. For nearly a century, Boeing was the ultimate symbol of American engineering. They put men on the moon. They built the jets that connected the globe. The phrase used to be, "If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going." But today, whistleblowers are turning up dead under mysterious circumstances. Pilots are terrified, and a trail of 346 bodies remains buried under a mountain of stock buybacks, executive bonuses, and corporate greed. This is the story of how the greatest engineering company in human history was hijacked by Wall Street, and how, in the relentless pursuit of profit, Boeing traded human lives for higher stock prices. To understand the rot at the core of modern Boeing, we have to go back to what the company used to be. Up until the late 1990s, Boeing was a company run by engineers, for engineers. It was a culture obsessed with safety and innovation. The executives didn't sit in ivory towers, they walked the factory floors in Seattle. If an engineer saw a flaw, they had the power to stop the entire assembly line. Safety wasn't a checklist, it was a religion. But in 1997, everything changed. Boeing merged with its failing rival, McDonnell Douglas. On paper, Boeing bought them out. But inside the industry, it was famously said that McDonnell Douglas bought Boeing, with Boeing's own money. The executives from McDonnell Douglas were not engineers. They were cutthroat Wall Street businessmen, obsessed with one thing and one thing only, the share price. Leading this hostile takeover of Boeing's culture was Harry Stonecipher. His philosophy was brutal and simple. He famously told his team, "We are going to change the culture of Boeing. When people say I changed the culture of Boeing, that was the intent, so that it's run like a business rather than a great engineering firm." Almost immediately, the center of gravity shifted. Boeing moved its corporate headquarters away from the manufacturing plants in Seattle all the way to Chicago. The message was clear. The executives didn't want to be near the airplanes. They wanted to be near the money. The engineers who had built the company's legacy were silenced, fired, or pushed out. Cost-cutting became the new religion, and this toxic shift set a ticking time bomb inside the company, a bomb that would detonate 20 years later. Fast forward to 2011, Boeing's European rival, Airbus, announces a massive game-changer, the A320neo. It was a highly fuel-efficient jet that threatened to steal Boeing's most lucrative customers. American Airlines, a legacy Boeing client, was about to defect to Airbus. Boeing panicked. They didn't have time to design a new airplane from scratch. That would take a decade and billions of dollars. Instead, the executives ordered their engineers to strap massive, new, fuel-efficient engines onto a 50-year-old airframe, the Boeing 737. They called this Frankenstein creation, the 737 MAX. But there was a lethal problem. The new engines were so big, they had to be mounted further forward and higher up on the wings. This completely changed the aerodynamics of the plane. During takeoff, the massive engines pushed the nose of the plane dangerously upward, creating a massive risk of an aerodynamic stall, a scenario where the plane literally falls out of the sky. Instead of fixing the physical design, Boeing's management applied a cheap, invisible software band-aid. They created a secret program called MCAS. If the airplane's sensors thought the nose was too high, MCAS would automatically force the nose of the plane down. But here is the most sinister part of the story. Boeing didn't tell the pilots that MCAS existed. Why? Because if they admitted the plane had a new complex software system, the FAA would require pilots to undergo expensive simulator training. And Boeing had promised the airlines that flying the 737 MAX required zero new simulator training. They literally hid a deadly software override system inside the plane's code, just to save money on marketing. They gambled human lives to protect their profit margins, and they lost. On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta. Almost immediately, a single faulty sensor fed bad data to the hidden MCAS system. The computer falsely believed the plane was stalling. For 12 agonizing minutes, the pilots fought a ghost in the machine. The software relentlessly pushed the nose of the plane down. The pilots would pull it up, and the computer would push it down again. They flipped through the manuals, desperate for an answer. But MCAS wasn't in the manual. Boeing had deleted it. The plane plunged into the Java Sea at over 400 miles per hour. 189 people were killed. In the aftermath, Boeing did the unthinkable. Instead of grounding the fleet, they blamed the dead pilots. They claimed it was a foreign maintenance issue. They assured Wall Street and the public that the 737 MAX was perfectly safe. 5 months later, March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, the exact same malfunction, the exact same hidden software, the exact same terrifying fight for survival in the cockpit. 157 more lives lost in an impact crater in Africa. 346 souls sacrificed at the altar of the stock market. Only then, when international outrage became deafening, was the jet finally grounded. But the corporate machine at Boeing was far from defeated. You would think that the grounding of the MAX would force a complete reset, that the company would return to its engineering roots. You would be wrong. Behind the factory doors, the culture of fear only accelerated. The pressure to pump out airplanes to satisfy Wall Street investors reached a boiling point. Workers were forced to work grueling overtime. Quality control checks were bypassed. Tools, trash, and debris were routinely left inside the fuel tanks of newly manufactured airplanes. And those who dared to speak up, they were crushed. Enter John Barnett, a veteran quality manager who worked at Boeing for over 30 years. He loved the company, but he couldn't ignore the terrifying drop in safety standards. He reported that up to 25% of the oxygen systems on the 787 Dreamliner could fail in an emergency. He reported that defective parts were deliberately taken out of scrap bins and installed on airplanes to speed up the assembly line. Boeing management ignored him, retaliated against him, and forced him out. Barnett spent the last years of his life in a brutal legal battle against the corporate Goliath, trying to warn the world. In March 2024, days after providing damning testimony against Boeing, John Barnett was found dead in his truck in a hotel parking lot. Authorities ruled it a self-inflicted gunshot wound. His friends and family publicly stated he told them, "If anything happens to me, it's not suicide." Within 2 months, a second whistleblower, Joshua Dean, a quality auditor who flagged massive defects, died suddenly after a rapid, mysterious infection. Coincidence? Perhaps. But in the court of public opinion, the message to Boeing factory workers was received loud and clear. Keep your mouth shut and keep building the planes. Which brings us back to that terrifying night in January 2024, when the door plug blew out over Oregon. Investigations revealed that the door was missing 4 crucial retaining bolts. The bolts weren't broken, they were simply never installed at the factory. Boeing has paid billions in fines. CEOs have stepped down with golden parachutes worth tens of millions of dollars. But the fundamental system remains unbroken. The stock market still demands endless growth, and private equity still dictates how the supply chain operates. The tragedy of Boeing isn't just about airplanes. It is the ultimate case study of modern American corporate capitalism. It is the terrifying reality of what happens when financial engineers replace mechanical engineers, when spreadsheets replace blueprints, and when a company decides that the cost of doing business includes the cost of human life. The next time you walk down the jet bridge, look at the logo painted by the door. You have to ask yourself, are you flying on a machine built to protect you, or are you flying on a financial instrument built to protect a billionaire's portfolio?